Hey there, and welcome to Reflections of a CEO. Thanks for joining today. Today, I want to talk about the law of attraction. Now, if you joined on our last episode, you'll know that we went through the 6 objectives or themes of 2019 that I have for me personally on the person I want to be and who I want to become over the next year. And 2 of those specifically relate to the law of attraction. And I'm just going to read them off just so we set some context on what we're going to be talking about today. So again, there were 6 areas that I focused on, but 2 of them are what we're really going to focus on today. 1 is I choose to allow money to flow to me easily and effortlessly. And the second is I choose to attract abundance in all aspects of my life. So really this year I'm working on rewiring my belief system in a way, focusing on mindset. And I've really had this block over the past few years, I guess really my entire life, around letting money flow to me easily and effortlessly. I've really thought in the past I've had this relationship where I've had to work really hard for money, and that's the only way that I was ever deserving of money. And then just in general, this concept of you only deserve something if you put in the effort and work, and therefore there isn't this thing such as abundance in all aspects of life. It only comes through pain and suffering, and that mindset is something that I'm realizing is limiting my potential and what I can do. And I've been able to do a lot with Jacked, right? And I think I've done it in spite of some of those beliefs that I have, and I'm just ready now to kind of rewire things. And I've been working with my coach a lot on this, is imagine what is possible if I really change my belief and mindset around these things. And so over the last couple days, Sasha's here next to me if you're joining by video. This is her. She knows that over the past few days, I've been listening to recordings for about a half hour to an hour, sometimes more each day, on stuff regarding mindset and working on rewiring how I think about things. It talks about abundance and the law of attraction. And the law of attraction, for those of you that don't know, and I'm still honestly working on what exactly it is, but the way I understand it is that essentially what you put out in the world will come to you, and specifically around the way you think about things. So if you think about something, it will be attracted to you. So for example, if you think about how much money you don't have, you won't have money. And it sounds kind of weird almost, at least to me, when I was first hearing about this. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So the concept that I've been listening to through these videos is that it's kind of like self-reinforcing is I think how you think about it. So if you think about how you're going to be without money, or how you're going to be sick, or you're going to be you're not going to have friends, and then that ends up happening to you, versus if you have a different mindset around it, around abundance, then the opposite will happen. And I'm still trying to grapple with this, because I'm like, oh, so is it that easy? You can just say, I'm thinking about a lot of money, so I'm gonna have it. I don't think it's that simple. So I'm still on my learning journey. Maybe it is that simple. That'd be great. But from what I've been listening to over the last few days around this, it's really around focusing on that thing, but also being happy. You don't have to be happy once you have that thing. You're in a place of just good where you are today, right? It's not like, oh, I'll be happy when I get this thing. It's I'm good and I feel good about things, and then things start flowing to you. And I've had experiences like this in the past where things just kind of come out of nowhere. I'm like, whoa, that's cool, because I'm just in such a good mindset, in a place of flow, feeling abundant, but I'm not always in that state. So I'm really trying to work on being in that state all the time. And there's been some people in the past, if you've ever heard of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he touches on some of these principles as well. It's, as the title implies, Think and Grow Rich. It's about thinking and getting rich and how he does it. And he says he has like this methodology kind of where it's you're thinking about it and then you take the actions and the plans to get there. But there's a lot of visualization around it. And I've a lot of times throughout my life, and Sasha knows this, I visualize a lot. So I do some of this stuff, right? Like, just to give an example, I visualized the last 2 apartments that we got in New York. I had visualized them years before we actually had them. And it may sound weird, but I literally visualized, here's exactly what I want, and here's what I'm gonna get. And then a couple years later, I got it. And that's happened back to back. And even in Miami, right? Like for years, I've been visualizing Miami and what I want. And we'll see today actually with the apartment if we get approved for this, not to jinx it, but I visualized kind of me personally, maybe not her vision, of what I wanted in an apartment in New York. In Miami. And we're about to get all of it.
We'll see.
Huh?
I said
we'll see, right? But like it's just so weird how when you visualize something and you put it out there, and you know one thing I was listening to in some of these recordings, and I'll mention to you the names of the recordings in a minute, but I don't want to detract from this, is when you're putting something out into the world, it doesn't always happen right away. I think that's where people might get hung up, and even me sometimes, but when you start visualizing and you think about it, some of the things I visualized took me years to realize. I was like, oh, yeah, I've been working on that. So it didn't happen a month later, even a year later, like 5 years later it happens because I've just been so focused on it. So really, I know it works because I've done it. And really, I think what's also I need to work on is being like, hey, it might not happen in a few years. It's shown to work with me over a 5-year span, a 7-year span. So, okay. Just keep visualizing and putting things out in the world that are positive thoughts, and eventually it will happen. There may be trying times in the middle, right? It's not that it's always going to be rosy, right? There could be some down times, but eventually, if you are focused on that enough, I do believe it will actually happen. So. There's also a few other books that I like about this. One is called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is all about like your self-image and your belief in who you are. Both of those two books are quite old. But the videos I'm talking to you about are put on by someone named Esther and Jerry Hicks. It's a husband and wife that my coach told me about. And they go through something called the Teachings of Abraham, which is all around the law of attraction and mindset and this sort of thing. And I have to say, at least for me, it's a little weird. Some of the stuff that they talk about is a little weird, and just because it's so unconventional, or it's you'll just have to, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, just go on YouTube, type in their names. But Sasha and I have been listening to those videos recently, and she was also a little weirded out, I would say, by them. But there are points where Sasha's like, oh, that's a good point, huh?
I actually really enjoy it. It reminds me of, in psychology, the term self-fulfilling prophecy, which is basically just a positive feedback loop between behaviors and thoughts.
You would tie it back into psychology. So what is that principle?
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Basically, either directly or indirectly, whatever you're willing into being becomes.
So that's like the law of attraction.
Exactly.
But there's a scientific
explanation and studies around it.
So that makes me feel better, kind of.
Yeah, okay. Me too. That's why I was really into it, because I could actually tie it to something that I had studied.
Do you know why that is? Or like, what's the actual science behind that? Do you know?
We can link below and maybe do a follow-up to this, and I can go through some of the research.
Yeah, I'm just curious. All right, so it's actually, the principle, it's a psychology principle. Mm-hmm. That what you put out into the world, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because then it happens. Or is it what you think?
So
your thoughts?
It's a combination between your behaviors and your beliefs.
Behaviors and beliefs.
Behaviors and beliefs. So it's a positive feedback loop. So it keeps going around and around. I believe this, and so I'm actually indirectly or directly shaping my behavior. And I keep believing it, and because I think it, I actually do the behaviors and things to get me where I want to go, even if I don't know that I'm doing them.
Oh, so that's kind of what, and Esther and Jerry Hicks, I haven't gone deep enough to know if that's also what they're going to talk about, but in Think and Grow Rich, that's kind of the concept is you think about it, and then you take actions over a period of time, and then you achieve it. So you have to believe it. You have to like truly believe it. And this is what I like. And I visualize. I just believe it so much. But then if you think about it, then I took actions to get there, and then they lined up, and then you have it, right? I mean, that's how we formed our life in splitting between Miami and New York. For those of you that don't know, Sasha and I are splitting our time between Miami and New York. I've been visualizing, thinking about this situation for years, and then we made it happen because we took the actions to make it happen. So that's very interesting. So it's a combination of both of those, and that's what I'm waiting to see if Esther and Jerry Hicks also talk about that. But you know what's interesting? Is it about because in Think and Grow Rich, it's very much about a specific thing. So at least that's how I recall it. It's like you want a specific amount of money, and then you believe it, and then you take the action there. Versus the difference with the law of attraction, the way Esther and Jerry Hicks describe it. You actually start very general, and then you go specific. So you generally feel like I'm good, I'm happy, and then you start getting more specific with it. But with the principle you're talking, is it, do you start like specific, like, all right, I want this house, and then you believe that, and then you take the action? Or how does it work in
psychology?
Yeah.
So usually it's attributed to something that you observe. It's not something that me as an individual would say, I'm going to make this a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's an interesting question. It's not, does that make sense?
No, can you explain a little bit more?
Sure. So usually in psychology, if you're talking to a therapist, a psychologist, they would take notes on your behavior, right? The things you're saying. And then they would say, well, this is what they concluded from that. It's not usually the other way around, where the individual uses that as a tool to help get things that they want. But to actually answer your question of, is it a specific thing or a generalization, it can be either. It can be, yeah.
I'm still learning, and maybe it's one of these things where you listen to a couple people talk, you learn about it, and you kind of find what works for you. I'm not sure. I'm kind of on like a journey and a path this year. But what I do know is that I don't truly believe, in these two beliefs, and I'm just looking at my screen here. I choose to allow money to flow to me easily and effortlessly. I don't truly believe that. I believe that given a situation, as hard as it is, I will get through it. I have just a self-belief, and I've done that over and over again. I think part of the reason why I've got through a lot of the shit that I've been through, and if you've been joining on these podcasts or watch my YouTube or follow me on social media, you'll see me talking about some of the downs that I've had, or on my blog where I detail, states of depression and states of where 50% of the company leaving and being sued and like all these things, because I had just this unwavering belief that I would get through it. So there is an element of where, and I think that helped pull me through things, is just because I believed it so much. Like it was like I just believed that I can do it.
Well, there's no other option, and I think that.
Well, there's another option, which is you don't believe it.
Well, I'm saying, but your belief was so strong that there was nothing else. That could be done.
No, it's interesting. Like I literally channeled it. Like when my belief was like that, there was no like failure option.
Exactly.
It was just like, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to get through this. Period. That's it.
Full stop.
Right? And you're just so determined, which is interesting. I wonder how that will translate into this other one, because I just believe I don't know why. I've just had that belief in myself and me as a person. So I do believe in the power of belief, and then taking action. Though it's not like I just believed it and I sat there and shit happened.
No, but I think subconsciously and consciously you made actions and behaviors to get to that point. I think that there was a little bit of subconscious behaviors happening.
Probably. Well, what, like, conscious behavior is me taking the action. Subconscious, what do you mean by that?
I mean, maybe I'm doing something without realizing what the end result would be.
Do you think that's the brain just doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Like messing with, you know? Yeah, that's interesting.
Sometimes so breathing, right, is a very passive thing. I don't think to breathe, but I know that I'm breathing because it's going to give me life.
How do you think then, so I had this belief, like this unwavering self-belief of like, I will get through anything. That is one belief I have, right? Like, I don't need to be wired like that. I just firmly believe it. I don't know why though. I don't know where it came from or what it is. How is that belief structured? Because the reason why I'm asking this is because I need to rewire myself around money, for example, this year. And I just have that belief about myself so strong. So how, from a psychology standpoint, if you know, how does a belief just get so ingrained that like you just actually believe it to be true?
Repetition.
Oh, that's interesting. In Think and Grow Rich, they also talk about this. Maybe Think and Grow Rich should just be a psychology book.
I mean, it's definitely based on a lot of principles. And I would also say
repetition. That's a good one. So what, just like thinking it over and over. That's also what Esther and Jerry Hicks talk about. A lot of this stuff is in psychology then. I mean, because it's all about the brain.
Exactly.
And the way it works. So it's declaring what you want. Maybe it's visualizing it. Maybe it's whatever. Like a belief. You have a belief. You repeat the belief. And then you take actions consciously and subconsciously to achieve it.
Repetition reads results. It's one of my favorite phrases.
Repetition reads results. I mean, I do believe in that. It's like consistent.
Exactly.
That is why I think over time you just keep doing things over and over and over again, and it just like builds over time. Because
if it's not ingrained in you, like say from a very young age, your parents were always telling you something, or if it's not a core part of your personality. So your personality, in definition, does not change. It's who you are.
Well, your personality?
Your personality should not change.
What do you mean by that? Can you define that? Because I think personality can be interpreted a lot of different ways. So make sure you're speaking to the mic here.
Sure. So you've taken your personality inventory. Basically, there's an acronym OCEAN, which are these 5 traits that you kind of fall on a scale. It's not a yes, I'm open to experiences. No, I'm not. It's floating. Maybe I'm like a 13% yes type of situation. But that is really relatively stable. The only thing that can fundamentally alter your personality and the way that you think about things, not think about from an objective way with learning, but just who you are as a person is stable. And it just, the only thing that will change it is like a significant life event, such as trauma.
Will change your personality?
Correct. Fundamentally is what I'm saying. So if, for example, you are definitely more on the introverted scale.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to fundamentally, you're not going to just tomorrow become the most outgoing person in the world.
Okay, sure.
That's what I mean by it's not going to fundamentally change. But I'm saying, so unless these beliefs are tied to something like that is very stable or were very ingrained in you growing up, or from yourself, it's very hard to make these big belief changes in your life unless they're repeated over and over and over.
So you can, though, in that sense.
Exactly. Or there's a huge life change that wills it into being, essentially.
Got it. I was going to say, there has to be something that changed because, for example, I used to hate talking to people, sales, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, I love meeting one-on-one with people, doing, selling, because I rewired how I thought about selling. It was, in service to people, and it was a necessity to keep my business in business. So then all of a sudden I changed my belief around it.
Exactly.
And people are actually surprised when I say I'm very introverted. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, people are always surprised at that. I'm 100%. It's just, I just have such a draw towards, because I'm like, well, I have to stay in business, and also I actually like talking one-on-one. It's draining to me, but like, I just had to do it to stay in business, and I cared more about staying in business than hiding. And so therefore I kind of changed that. So that's kind of what you're saying. So that same principle can be applied to anything. And if I apply it to my relationship with money or just abundance in all areas of life, then and I believe it, I repeat it, and then I take action on it. Essentially what I've been doing, what you're saying is I can do that because it's actually happened in the past. I just didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing it, which was there was a reason for it. I believed it. I wanted it. I took the actions. I kept repeating it, and then it happened. I just didn't break down the formula, but that's essentially what was happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that end result was something that you actually cared about.
Yeah, I cared about it very much.
Keeping the business alive. You know, so it can't just be the reason why people quit or don't do things or change their behaviors is because they actually don't care enough to
their why isn't big enough.
Exactly.
And that's essentially
exactly.
That kind of goes into it's the whole philosophy behind what Simon Sinek and his talk about the power of why, or it's called something like that, which is if you don't have a reason or a purpose or a why behind it as a company. He talks specifically about companies, but I think it applies to people too. Then there's something missing almost, right? Like it's not going to keep you going, and it doesn't draw you to that person or that company. But I also believe that unless you actually have a deeper reason for something, a purpose, a why, you just like won't keep going through the shit because, like a business, for example, it's a no sane person. Like if I took a step back and like looking at someone. And looking at myself even, at what I went through, I'm like, that's crazy. Like no sane person
in their right mind
would do it. But then you ask me in the moment, and like when I'm doing it, I'm like, there's no other thing I'd rather be doing. Even though it's all this shit and whatever, because I was just so focused on where I wanted to be. And so there definitely is something to that. And you really have to, I guess, focus on it. And essentially taking what I do in part of my life and applying it just to a new realm. And a realm that, for me, I think this one's harder for me just because I've had different beliefs ingrained in me by my family growing up, my circumstances growing up, around how, this money thing specifically, like any time I would easily make money or money would come to me without doing a bunch of work, it was seen as a negative, even by my own family.
I mean, your family and society as a whole. You as well. You started to believe that.
Yeah, I started to believe it.
Still do. That's why you're trying to change it.
Yeah, I mean, it even started when, I was 15 years old, starting in a business on eBay, selling things online, and it started because my parents asked me to go get a job at a yogurt shop down the street, and I looked at it, and at the time it was, I don't know, $5-6 an hour, and I was like, that doesn't sound fun to me. You work for $5-6 an hour for 8 hours a day, and you make $40-50. I'm like, that seems like a complete waste of my time. And so I figured out how to make money online, buying and selling things on eBay, essentially doing drop shipping, kind of before that was a big thing like it is today. I'm talking like, just for context, I'm 29, so this is 14-15 years ago, and I remember sitting there and making money on my phone while I was at the racetrack with my dad, and making $50 in a one purchase, and then another 50. And so while I'm there throughout a day, I'm making hundreds of dollars when someone else is working for 8 hours a day. And to me, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And it was never really celebrated actually by my family. It was like, okay, cool, that's nice. Like, you need to go get a job still. You still need to get a job, even though. And the job, my parents wanted me to. I remember this actually, and I was the worst. They asked me to go intern at my dad's work, and I was like, fine, I'll do it. It was like $20 an hour, $15 an hour. It was like, oh, so much. I was like, I don't care about that because I'll literally make more online. But they didn't care. I was like, what don't you guys understand? Like, I'm literally making more money than I could by a job that you think is safe and whatever. Like, and it was looked down. It wasn't looked as like real, and it was like, well, that's not real because like you're not spending all day on it and all of it. So even though I was having success, I didn't grow up with the encouragement of that. And then, even in college, I did some things like that. But anyways, it was like, I started believing it wasn't good. And part of me does, right? Like, I feel guilty even, to be honest, that I'm like, hey, I'm in Miami right now. My whole company is in, half of it's in New York. That's the home base. I'm not there. And yet I'm making money even though now, and for those of you that haven't been listening to this, over the last couple months, I've transitioned out from the day-to-day running of the business at Jacked, which is my main business, into a higher level role where I'm still spending, I don't know, it's like 10, 15 hours a week, up to 20 hours a week, but definitely not the 60, 80, 100 that I used to. But I still make money now, right, from it. And part of me feels bad about that because I'm like, well, I'm not working for it.
But you are working very hard.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because I still don't necessarily always believe that, but it's like, yes, I've worked also for the last 7 years setting things up, and I'm making small, really important decisions that actually impact massively. But since I'm not quote unquote working all day, it feels like a dirty kind of thing that, hey, I'm not actually working. And so what I need to really rewire myself though is saying, hey, no, like that's actually the game is, can I be the architect? Can I put things in place? I mean, I'm definitely spending my time on other things to help Popo Group, which is the holding company that owns Jack, but like it just feels weird still. Like I'm not comfortable still not doing the day-to-day work at Jack, and it's something I really need to work on and really accept. And until I really, really believe that, I think it's actually going to hinder even Jack's growth and almost self-sabotage it because I'm not there yet. So that's why every day now I'm just listening to these things, like really believing that I am worthy of this stuff, that it is okay, and that it doesn't require me to be in the business every single day. I've hired great people, very capable people on the leadership team. They're very able to do the job, and that was actually my role, which was building it up over the last 7 years, putting people in place and getting the fuck out of their way, and then moving on to a couple other things. But yeah, it's just interesting. I think it's a big reason why people are blocked in life and where they want to be is because of the mindset and the way you believe, literally in your head. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big game, and I think it's also a big reason why I've been able to get to where I am, because I was also very strong in my belief system when people were telling me to get a job and all of this. As much as I wasn't pushed forward in the entrepreneurial direction, I believed it so much that I didn't talk to my family for years because they hated so much that I was being an entrepreneur. I didn't care what friends thought about me, people thought about me, and I was just, I'm going to do this, and I just believe in myself, and it was pulling me so much that I had to do it. So it's very interesting that part of me, and there's experiences where that happens a lot, and then there's still other parts that I need to work on and develop. But I do know that if you believe something enough, and now that I'm figuring out and we're talking, you repeat it enough, you believe it, you visualize it, so much so that you believe it's real, and then you take the actions, like it becomes real. It becomes real.
It actually does. That's literally the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, wow, I'm like digesting that. You might not hear me talk, I'm just like thinking right now because it's quite amazing. What else should we talk about with regards to that? I mean, that's really the point I wanted to talk about today. I don't necessarily want to go into a different topic. Sometimes on these episodes we go into different topics, but I think maybe that's actually a good wrapping point. We've kind of covered this a lot. So just to repeat, little recap. So today we talked about the law of attraction, and I actually learned something new today from Sasha, which was that this actually has a lot of psychology principles in it, and what people are actually telling you in the Think and Grow Rich books and the videos of Esther and Jerry Hicks, or even Psycho-Cybernetics and a few others, the themes that they talk about can be drawn and related to science. So this concept of visualizing or believing and thinking what you want, how you want to feel, who you want to be, etc., repeating it all the time, and then taking the action consciously and subconsciously, and eventually it will become true. You just don't know when. And that was a concept that actually I've recently come across with Esther and Jerry Hicks. Is like, once you put it out there, you don't know when like, it's not like, oh, it's gonna happen in a day, but like, you put it out there, you keep working, and like, it will happen.
And I would add to that, I mean, it could take your entire life to happen.
Right.
You believe it so much, and so you change your behaviors to make it happen.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's no time, and it's going to differ from thing to thing.
So if I could leave everyone with this thing, if there's one thing that you're trying to do, and actually I'll before I get into my parting little ways, the other thing, I think we hit on one other important point today, which was the power of kind of why and why you're doing something. It's even why I put my 2019 objectives as I choose, this, or who I want to be or become, because that's such a why that I care about it so much. Then, and funny enough, it actually relates to this, I knew that the actions I would take in order to be that person and believe that were gonna, as long as I had a deeper reason why I wanted to take those actions, I'd do it. So funny enough, exactly what you're talking about is literally the reason why I formulated these things, because I knew if I had a deeper purpose, then it would, help me get through those harder times. It's a big reason why people on their goals, they like, well, I'm just going to work out 3 times a week, and then you get tired of it because there's not a deeper reason why you're doing it. So I think that's another point that's important that we talked about. But if there is something, and I'll leave it on this note, if there's some belief that you have, realize that actually it is a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. So you can actually rewire that. So the belief that you have, if it's around money, a lot of people have money beliefs that are not great, subjectively speaking, or there's other beliefs about you like that. I don't know what it is, but if you have those certain beliefs, try and actually work. You can actually change it. I truly believe that you can change it with some of the things that we talked about today, and or reading some of these books, you'll get some of the tidbits. But you can actually rewire your mindset and your beliefs, and it can really change your life. I'm living proof of that with certain things. I'm just trying to apply it now actively. I didn't realize I was doing it before, trying to apply it actively to things now. But it is possible. So think about those things, and I challenge you to actually work on changing who you are and who you want to become, and give it some time. But I really think that you can change, and I'll be on this journey this year, so I'll keep everyone posted on how those things go. Again, it may not take a year, it could be 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, but I'm on this journey, and I hope at least one of you out there decides to come on a journey similar to mine with me. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this episode of Reflections of a CEO. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, guys.